I think that I want to start making new content on YouTube, or at least like a new chapter of content where I want to cover more disasters. And what I mean by disasters is I mean like just want to cover more like tragic events and like more stories of the past that people kind of forget about, and rightfully so, you know. Obviously, it's if it's a negative experience, people are going to talk about it, you know, but after so long, people forget about the stuff. So, you know, I have a lot of ideas of what I want to, you know, what tragedies I want to cover, but I think the first one gonna be all nuclear stuff. And so, I mean, right off the bat, we're gonna get started on one. So, also shout out to Kyle Hill. Shout out to Kyle Hill because he literally makes these videos and they're all based on science and nuclear, and they're always very interesting. This one is just, it so happens to be, it's not just science, it's actually an event in history. So, this is a little bit different than the content that he usually makes. And yeah, this is gonna be on the Demon Core. If you don't know what the Demon Core is, we're gonna get right into it. I'm not gonna waste any more of your time. YouTube, if you're watching this in the future, like, share, and subscribe, and let me know if you have any ideas of videos I should react to or tragedies that I should cover.
In 1946, a P-239 plutonium core scheduled for detonation by nuclear bomb was harmlessly melted down and reintegrated into the United States' nuclear stockpile. That was the end of a 14-pound metallic sphere that had killed 2 scientists not 11 months before. This is the true story of the Demon Core. The spheres of atomic material that had obliterated the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki would have easily fit in your hand, and they were light enough to carry.
Wow.
Because of the extreme levels of radiation coming from them, the cores were carried around in secure containers, but curious physicists reported that the cores were disturbingly warm to the touch. Both the Little Boy and Fat Man nuclear bombs use subcritical masses of uranium and plutonium respectively, meaning that no self-sustaining nuclear reaction would be possible with the spheres alone, and the nickel plating that covered them would prevent most of the escaping radiation from harming you. The real harm comes later.
Holy shit.
The terrible explosions that Little Boy and Fat Man are famous for only happen when a nuclear core goes critical, using directed conventional explosives to artificially induce a critical mass. This meant literally compressing a plutonium or uranium sphere into a much smaller volume with explosions. Now, neutrons emitted from natural radioactivity would be much more likely to go on and impact other atoms before escaping, leading to a chain reaction of exponentially more and more atoms releasing tremendous energy. At the heart of an atomic blast is a radioactive core filled with atoms poised like rat traps. All the bomb itself does is force one of those traps to snap.
Wow, holy shit. So that's pretty interesting. So it's not even like the conventional type of bomb that you would think with like C4, gunpowder, and whatnot. This is nothing like that. You know, this is completely different. And he said that most of the damage comes after. I mean, that was very ominous. And I mean, hey, we saw that. Saw how it affected some communities, even surrounding communities that weren't directly hit by the bomb.
The so-called Demon Core was the third core of fissionable nuclear material made during the World War II era. It was also supposed to be dropped on Japan, but after the Empire's prompt surrender following the obliteration of Nagasaki, the core had no immediate military use. Instead, a physicist working at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico after the war decided to use the remaining core to figure out just what it takes to make a core like this go critical. When Otto Robert Frisch first arrived in the United States, he was placed at Los Alamos to study neutron multiplication in uranium and plutonium. These elements naturally radiate neutrons in the process of nuclear decay, and as we said, if there is enough of the radioactive element close enough together, these neutrons can go on to cause the rat trap style reaction as neutrons slam more neutrons free from other atoms. However, there is another way to force criticality other than just having a giant sphere of plutonium, which would be hard to make. It turns out that if you use a very thick material to reflect neutrons coming out of the material back upon itself, like a mirror would, a self-sustaining reaction can occur with substantially less plutonium or uranium. Even though an explosion might not happen after criticality is reached in all cases, a deadly blast of radiation certainly could. And that's exactly what happened. By 1944,
Holy
Frisch
shit.
was leading the Critical Assembly Group at Los Alamos and started a dangerous series of near-criticality testing. The physicists in the group wanted to use neutron-reflective materials around spheres of plutonium and uranium to see just how close they could get to going critical, without explosives and without going over the edge. Commenting on the inherent risk of experiments of this kind, legendary physicist Richard Feynman reportedly said that the experiments were like, quote, tickling the tail of a sleeping dragon, end quote. But
So he's saying like, dude, we knew this was dangerous as fuck, but it was kind of fun. Like that's not what I thought he was gonna say. I'm gonna be honest.
even with the very real possibility of being roasted alive by the radioactive fire of a failed criticality test, the tickling the dragon's tail experiments continued.
Wow.
Within 2 years, neutron reflection experiments on the Demon Core would claim the lives of 2 scientists, Harry K. Dogley
What?
Jr. and Louis Slotin, in almost the exact same way.
It killed 2 people. Like think about that. Like it took the lives of 2 of the scientists that was working on it. I mean, how dangerous is this shit? Like holy fuck, man. I mean, and it's only dangerous, I'm assuming, when you don't know what you're doing. You really have no idea what you're doing, then it's dangerous. But it's like now they're probably doing shit like this on a regular basis and no one's dying.
On August 21st, 1945, Harry K. Dogley Jr. was conducting a criticality experiment with the Demon Core. He was placing tungsten carbide bricks around the mass of plutonium to see how many bricks and in what orientation it would take to reflect enough neutrons to cause the core to go critical.
Holy shit.
That afternoon, using a Geiger counter-like device to measure the radiation coming off of the plutonium, he got close enough to criticality that he decided to end the experiment. Now, this result should have been worth just a few graphite streaks in a notebook and maybe a beer at the local bar with the other physicists, but Dogley was curious. Later that night, he returned, alone, to his assembly for another test. Like the tests before, Dogley created an orientation of bricks that his measuring device told him was nearly critical. As he was placing one last brick, the measuring device indicated that the core would go critical if he continued on the assembly. The dragon would wake up. So cautiously, he began removing the final brick, and then he dropped it.
Oh my god.
The moment the brick hit the assembly, the Demon Core instantly went supercritical.
Oh
And
no.
according to Dogley, there was a blast of blue light and a wave of heat. Dogley reacted quickly, though, and used his right hand to knock the dropped brick all the way to the floor. In those fractions of a second, Harry had received a fatal dose of radiation.
Oh
In
my
fact, he had
God.
endured what was likely the highest acute dose of radiation of any human in history.
What?
25 days later, Dogley fell into a coma and died from organ failure owing to severe radiation poisoning.
Dude, that
This
sounds
photo,
awful.
taken 9 days after the accident by medical staff, is of the hand that Harry had used to stop the Demon Core.
Holy shit, bro.
He was 24.
The radiation literally
Harry
peeled
wasn't
his head
completely
apart.
alone and experimenting in the lab that night. A security guard, Private Robert J. Hemmerly, was also sitting at his desk next to Dogley and reading
Oh
his
my
newspaper.
god.
Hemmerly died 33 years after Dogley Jr. from what is now considered to be radiation-caused leukemia.
What? Dude,
He was
wait,
29 and the father
wait.
of 2.
Wait, the security guard was just at his desk nearby somewhere, not even in the same room, and he got enough radiation that 30 years later he died from radiation-induced leukemia. That's the cancer in the white blood cell. Like, that's fucking crazy. Like, what the fuck? Dude, you were just there. That's how much radiation was coming off of this. I mean, that's a tragedy, bro. Like, that's so gnarly. And to think that he was able to move the thing, he didn't even get the full effect of all the radiation because he stopped it technically by moving the other brick with his right hand. But it didn't matter. It literally burned through his hand. And think about it, he died 20 something days later. It's like, it's pretty gnarly, man. And just went into a coma. Like, holy shit. Dude, playing with this thing is no joke.
At the time of exposure. Harry K. Dogley Jr. was the first official fatality from a criticality accident and the first American casualty of the atomic age. He had arranged to have his body donated to science after his inevitable end so that scientists could study the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. During the 25 days after his fatal mistake,
He's only
Doglian's colleague,
24.
Louis Slotin, spent many hours at his bedside, comforting the 24-year-old as radiation poisoning slowly claimed him. Exactly 7 months later, in the same hospital, Louis Slotin would suffer the exact same fate.
How?
By 1946, physicist Louis Slotin had taken over the critical assembly group from Frisch. Though the criticality experiments were moved from the Omega site at Los Alamos to the Palajito laboratory, the dangerous nature of the experiments did not change.
Oh my
In addition
God.
to Feynman's continued warnings, physicist Enrico Fermi said that, quote, "Keep doing that experiment that way, and you'll be dead within a year."
Oh no.
But Louis Slotin wasn't worried,
Bro.
and the experiments continued.
He warned you.
On May 21st, 1946, Slotin was conducting another criticality experiment with the Demon Core. This time, though, instead of using tungsten bricks, Slotin was testing the critical point of the core by placing it inside two half spheres made of beryllium and lowering those halves until there was just a sliver of space before the sphere was complete. If the core was completely enclosed, the reflection of neutrons would be total, and the dragon would wake again.
Oh.
The local expert among experts, Slotin was reportedly brash in his experimental protocols. In his signature pair of blue jeans and cowboy boots, Slotin would perform the criticality tests without the fail-safe spacers that would sit on the half spheres and keep it from ever completely closing. Instead, he would put his bare hand on the top half sphere and attempt to lower it using only the blade of a flathead screwdriver.
This is
That
ridiculous.
way he could get much closer to criticality. And Slotin had successfully...
Like, okay, do these people know that 2 people already died doing this experiment? Because this is fucking crazy. Like, to just willingly do this, and you're just holding it with a fucking flathead screwdriver and some shorts. Like, bro, what type of scientist are you? Ugh.
completed this experiment dozens of times. The afternoon of the accident, Louis Slotin was conducting the same screwdriver experiment as 7 other colleagues recorded and watched. It was just like the test before, but for whatever reason, this time, the screwdriver slipped. The
Oh my
moment the
God.
spheres touched, the demon core went prompt critical. The reflected neutrons coming from the plutonium inside the sphere instantly initiated supercriticality. Like the Doglian accident, there was a flash of blue light and a wave of the dragon's heat before Slotin could flip the top half sphere off of the assembly. Naturally, the 7 other scientists in the room ran out as fast as they could as the accident occurred, but Slotin shouted them all to get back and tossed them a stick of chalk. He told them each to mark down precisely where they were standing. By establishing their positions relative to the demon core, Slotin would be able to calculate just how much radiation each person had just absorbed, and how much their lives had just been shortened.
Holy shit.
According to physicist Raymer Schreiber, who was present in the room with Slotin that day, Slotin's first words immediately after the incident were, quote, "Well, that does it."
Oh my God.
Louis Slotin died of severe radiation poisoning 9 days later at the age of 35.
He died even sooner.
He died in the same hospital as Harry Doglian Jr. on another Tuesday the 21st as a result of the same accident with the same hunk of radioactive material.
Dude, he died even sooner than the last guy. The last guy took like 20 days to die in the hospital. This guy died in fucking 9 days. That's how lethal of a dose it was. Like, that's so crazy. I mean, that's like half as fast as like the other, like, dude, what the fuck, or twice as fast, you know? Like, that's so crazy, dude. I mean, this is deadly, bro.
They even were cared for by the same nurse. The demonstration that day was supposed to be the final demonstration with the core before it was used in a test detonation, and it was. In those few moments, Louis Slotin had been exposed to over 1,000 rads of radiation from the neutrons and gamma rays blasting out of the demon core. This is possibly the highest dose of radiation any human has ever taken. As a comparison, 1,000 meters from ground zero in Hiroshima, the neutron radiation was measured as less than half of what Slotin had absorbed in those fractions of a second. Since 1945, over 60 criticality accidents have been recorded, leading to at least 21 deaths in facilities and labs all around the world.
Holy shit.
The flash of blue light that so often accompanies these incidents is an indication of the invisible radiation being released.
Oh my
As
God.
high-energy particles crash through the air, like these particles exiting a cyclotron, they excite the air molecules. The only way for these molecules to return to a lower energy state is to release some radiation of their own, photons of light. But while gases can absorb and re-emit the energy imparted to it by nuclear material, human bodies cannot. Instead, particles and gamma rays flying out of the nuclear cores rip electrons from the molecules that make you up and smash your cellular machinery beyond repair.
Wow.
When enough molecular damage is done, radiation sickness can manifest itself as everything from vomiting and diarrhea to blisters, inflammation, impaired cognition, widespread organ failure, confusion,
Holy
nausea,
shit.
high fever, dizziness.
That sounds like a horrible death.
5 weeks later, on July 1st, 1946, a different nuclear core was destroyed in a 23-kiloton air-deployed nuclear weapon over Bikini Atoll. It was supposed to be the end of the Demon Core. Instead, the Demon Core was melted down and redistributed throughout the rest of the United States stockpile, effectively getting a brand new half-life.
Wow.
Until next time.
Dude, like, what the fuck? Like, think about that. These scientists were just trying to figure out how to fucking make a bomb and kill other people. And in the midst of that, they ended up dying. I mean, what do you, like, am I supposed to, I almost don't feel bad because of what they were doing, but at the same time, it's like, dude, they died such a gnarly death. I don't, like, oh, that sounds awful, man. 21 days in the hospital and you're dying from radiation poisoning. You fucking eventually just slip into a coma anyways. It's like, it just sounds so like, oh man, all because you touched, that's so insane, because you touched the two spears together, or like, you know what I mean, you dropped a brick or something. Like, that's gnarly, man. And you die at 24. Like, wow. Yeah, that was the Demon Core. Definitely a good video, definitely a interesting topic. And yeah, we're definitely gonna cover some more topics like this in the future. Apex are out.